You're listening to Bellwethers Podcast with Matthews Joseph.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Bellwethers Podcast. And today we have a fellow podcaster on this episode. His name is Matty Swifty Perry, and he is a high school pastor out of Arizona. And also he's the founder and the lead host in a podcast called LeaderSwift. I don't know how many, most of you might have heard of it or you have not heard of it. So the guys who have heard of it definitely needs no introduction about him. But to the guys who have not heard about him, I'd suggest go right away to Apple Podcasts and get out what LeaderSwift is and make sure you hear those episodes. It's amazing. So we have Matthew with us. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us. It's amazing. It's an honor to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So honored to be here and so excited just to talk a little bit about leadership.
All right, Matt. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, a little bit about me. I am married. We have a dog. And that's the most important leadership job I have is in my home. It is to be the best husband I can be and to lead my wife well. And then my second most important is to pastor high school students and leaders. And then third is to just on social media and through podcast to create leadership content and actually getting my doctorate in strategic leadership right now and constantly want to help people up their level of leadership in their life.
Yeah, I recently read your testimony on Instagram about, how you got from masters. I mean, I think you're having masters and the finals of the masters and also starting the doctorate the same month, right?
Oh, no, same week. That's this week.
Same week. Oh,
I got 2 10-page papers still to write this weekend and also doctorate work intensives. And I'm also in Washington preaching at a youth conference this weekend. So preaching 3 times.
Yeah, and he's doing this podcast in the midst of this. You see how
you know what? God gives grace, and we're ready to rock and roll this week. And next week, I'm gonna rest on the beach in Hawaii. So
hey man, that's awesome. I think that's the perfect one to get off. All right, Matt. So let's not without further ado, let's just dive in. Let's talk about leadership. I think that's the best thing that we could talk about because we have a pro over here who's a pro in leadership. So let's jump into the first question. How do you think leadership evolves in leaders over a period of time?
Yeah, I think leadership evolves based off of how hungry the leader is.
Wow.
When I think about how something grows, it's based on how much you want it. I played basketball my whole life. And to grow as a basketball player, it was how much work am I willing to put in? I didn't just become a better basketball player by simply walking into a game. I became a better basketball player by the hours of practice and by watching film and doing all of these things that every day I was like, I want to be a better basketball player. And it's very much like being a better leader. There's a few things that have to happen for you to grow. You have to be hungry to always learn. The best leaders are the best learners, right? They're constantly learning new leadership things, either from books or podcasts or YouTube or TED Talks or all of these things, but they're not just learning it as information. Leadership is not just theory, but it's practice. You can read a lot of great books on how to have a hard conversation with somebody, but it's not until you actually have hard conversations with people can you exercise that muscle as a leader. And so I just think, it evolves by being hungry to learn. Is just one of the ways. I would say another way leadership evolves, it has to do with that, but it's constantly practicing. Leadership is a people thing. You can't be a better leader if no one is following you, right? Leadership is your influence. And so who is following you? Like, what do they think about you? How are you loving them? Too many people, I think, are in leadership positions without loving their followers. They use their followers to elevate their position, but that's not a real leader to me. A real leader is a servant leader. They are like, how can I serve the people under me? And we just see that throughout history, with from Jesus all the way through all of these other leaders throughout history. It was all about the followers. I think the best leaders are leaders of organizations that take care of their team. The best leaders are like, I want to do whatever it takes to keep my team here. I don't want to keep just bringing in new leaders and then they get tired of the organization and they leave. Then we bring in new people. I think that's extremely unhealthy for the organization. I think the best leaders are like, how can I take care of who I have so that they're there for the long run, the 20, 30, 40 years under my leadership. So I think it evolves by practice, learning and practice.
Wow, that's like, that's just awesome, because I think just to add on what you just said, I think the best leaders are the best followers. And if you if you take, one of the examples that I really love, I always quote the Bible, because to me leadership is like Jesus is like the perfect example that you can quote for leader. And while Jesus was on earth, whilst he was serving in ministry, he had 12 disciples, and of them there was Peter. Peter was like, Peter was a good follower of Jesus. He saw what Jesus did, he studied what Jesus did, he learned what Jesus did, and eventually he became on to went on to lead the first church. And that is something important, because since he was a good follower, that's how what made him a good leader. And if you cannot follow, I don't think you can lead. And I think following is like the first step to leadership. And I think that's like the basic, and that's like, that's leadership 101. Follow someone.
Yeah. Every leader needs a leader in their life, right? Even if you look at the president of the United States, they have other leaders in their life. They had spiritual advisors, they have leadership people, they have a team of people helping them be better leaders. Jesus had a team of people, right? Jesus didn't even do it alone. And so every single leader needs a team. And oftentimes that leader will get the credit for their team. But then how are you just loving and serving your team?
Yeah, just like John Maxwell says, the best way: teamwork makes the dream work. So
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yes,
that's
sir.
it. That's right. Yeah. So how you lead your team makes you how you lead yourself. Everything is like intertwined. So how you do one thing, it actually makes up. It's like a chain reaction. So how you do one thing affects the next thing. Cool. All
Yep.
right. So, and on to our next question. So, how has the LeaderSwift podcast helped you discover the leader inside yourself?
Yeah, the LeaderSwift podcast started out with, let me hit up a bunch of leaders that I admire and have a conversation with them. And if nobody listens to this conversation, at least I'm learning from them. So that's how it started, right? I didn't create a leadership podcast to build a platform for myself. I created it to, like, I want to learn. I'm already having these great conversations without them being recorded. Let me record them and help other leaders grow from these conversations I'm already having. And so, yeah, it's helped me to grow as a leader, because every time I sit down, I'm like, what can I learn from this person? I don't care who they are and what they've done. It's just me learning from them. And so, yeah, I think the thing about the LeaderSwift podcast is it constantly cultivates a heart of learning for me. And it's all about humility, right? Humility opens up the heart to take in more learning. And for me, it was like, man, I'm just honored to be on this call with this person. Let me take notes myself. Let me learn. And it's so cool how I can help other people learn from the same things I'm learning.
Well, that's so much true. Because if nobody else is learning, at least you are learning. And when you look like the positive side of it, that's like a huge thing. Because if you think it in a way, because at the end of the day, that conversation ultimately it develops you, it impacts you, and that is important. Because I mean, if you don't develop, the way you develop is like how people see. I mean, like in your family, in your church, or in your workplace, wherever you are, like the way you develop into a better leader always has an inverse effect on all the people around you. And leading and becoming better leader is like, I think that's like the most important thing. I think that should be the second step of leader. I mean, first one should be following, the second one would be become better every day. At least strive to become better every day.
Yep, absolutely. It's all about me just learning and growing, because when I stop learning, I have seen myself become a worse leader. I've seen how it's impacted me leading my team, leading my staff, leading my family, leading myself. The hardest person to lead is the person who's staring right back at you in the mirror. I believe if we can learn how to lead ourselves well, am I going to get up on my first alarm or my 10th alarm? How many times am I pressing snooze? Am I doing what I need to do, or am I doing what I want to do, right? Discipline is such an important part in leading yourself. But I think if every person learns how to lead themselves well, they will lead their team 10 times better than they ever did in their life.
Wow, that's just like amazing. That's like, that's just like solid content. And I think, probably people who hear this are gonna be so much excited about leadership, and on a whole new level. So I'm gonna jump into the next question. And it's about, I think this whole one is about leadership and leaders getting better. So in your experience, what can a leader do to, lead better, to become better leader every day?
Yeah, I think the first thing they need to do is develop a plan, right? And whatever you're doing, you need a plan for success. So if a business is just getting started, they have to know where they're going. If there's no vision, the Bible talks about this. If there's no vision,
The people
there's
perish.
no, yeah, you'll perish, you'll die. A business will die if there's no vision of where they're going. But for ourselves, it's so easy to not have a vision for your life. It's so easy to not have a plan. I talk to people all the time, and they're like, yeah, I want to do this as my career. I'm like, cool. How are you going to get there? I don't know. You have to have a vision. You have to have a plan. Without vision, you'll perish. Without vision, that dream in you will die. You will not grow as a leader if you do not have a vision. It's different, right? You can set a goal, but just because you set a goal doesn't mean you know how to get to the goal. You have to create a way to get to your goal. The goal is the destination, but what's the vehicle to get you there? Your vision. And so create a vision plan, write down a couple goals, and then create a way to get there. This is what I do with my coaching. I'm not going to teach you how to grow your church to 5,000 people, because I've never grown a church to 5,000 people. I'm not going to teach you how to run your business and make $5 million the first year, because I've never created a business where I've made $5 million in a year. But what I can coach you in is how to create a plan to reach your goals and to create a vision for your life. And so I think that's where it starts. Is you can be an excited leader, but what is your plan of growth? I went to the gym, and I used to have a personal trainer, right? And the first thing the personal trainer would do is draw out, like, here is the body weight you want to be at. Here's the muscle mass you want to be at. Now let's create a plan to get there. And so I think as we want to grow as leaders, we have to do the same exact thing. Well, I want to get to this place. Cool. Let's create a plan. Sit down, just take out paper and be like, if I read one book a week, that means I'm going to watch one less Netflix show a week or a day, maybe. And then I'll read a chapter instead of that extra Netflix show. And that's part of my growth plan, to go meet with 2 people that I lead for coffee a week. I'm going to do that because that's part of my growth plan. So create a plan to get you to your goal. Don't just create a goal.
Wow, that's just what you just said. Just to add on what you said, one of the greatest quotes about planning was by Dr. Benjamin Franklin, and he says like, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So I think planning is like the basis of it. It's like one of the most, if you're going out for a war, if any country goes out for a war, the first thing that they do is like lay out a strategy, lay out a plan, because they have to start off something. They need to have a good wide angle of how it goes to be. And even if you're creating a business, you need to have a plan. You need to have like an action plan. Okay, what are the things that I need to achieve in this business? What are my, or what are, you need to analyze it. You need to see where are the ways, like where are the points where I can get a hit back, where are my weaknesses, where are my strengths in this business. And I think the same thing applies for leadership as well. If you're leading a church, and that also is like, where do you want to be, where are you right now, are you developing leaders? If you like lay out a questionnaire of what you want to do, or where you want to be, I think that actually makes it much more better. The planning is actually has a lot, I would say a lot, to do with the way you think, and the way you act, and the way you lead.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the head. And I love that Benjamin Franklin quote you said. If you plan, if you don't, what say it one more time. It was
If
so
you
good.
Okay, wait, hold on. If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail.
Yes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so I would encourage somebody listening to this, just press pause right now. Press pause and take out a sheet of paper and start planning out. Just start a simple plan and start. I remember in middle school, I wanted to get buff. And so I was like, the first thing to do is I'm just going to do 10 push ups at night before bed. And then what would happen after a couple weeks is I would add 10 more in. And then I was doing 20 push-ups. And then add in a few more weeks, I'd do another 10. And that's 30 push-ups before bed. And I started to build up my stamina. And the same thing, don't try and read 20 books a week. Don't try and meet with 50 people a week. Start with a chapter a week of a leadership book or a YouTube video or a TED talk. Start with one and then start to build on that. Start with meeting with one person and helping them grow, and then add in another one. You don't have to start with all of these big plans. Start with a little bit and start to build.
And I think that's something that you just said. Start with one. I think that is really, really, really important, because we aim for thousands. I mean, there's nothing wrong with aiming, but we think like we need to. I mean, for one of the things that people mistake about success is because it's that they need thousands of followers, or they need thousands of people, or they need thousands of contact at the beginning. It's entirely wrong, because it starts with one person, and that one, you multiply that into two, and that two becomes four, and that four becomes 16, and it goes on like that. So it always starts with one, and that's like the basic concept what you just said. It always starts with one chapter, or one audible book, or one YouTube video, or one TED talk, or anything. It starts with one. And just to mention that, because we're talking about planning and about one, I read in a book called The Compound Effect by an author called Darren Hardy. I think it's like one of the best business books. It is amazing. In that he says, he gives out a perfect example of laying your plan out, because he says, if you are flying from Los Angeles, from if you're flying from LA to New York, it's a straight path. But if you take 1% deviation to the left, you end up in Albany, New York. And if you take 1% deviation to the right, you end up in Delaware. So that's how important or strategic is 1% deviation in a flight plan. So imagine how much more it would be important when we lay it out in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's just jump into our last question before we wind up, and that would be like, what would be the golden words of leadership from Matthew Perry?
Oh Um man, I just think the biggest thing is lead yourself. Lead yourself. Be disciplined. do what you need to do, not necessarily what you want to do in the time you need to do it. Um, I think the world would be so much better if everybody saw themselves as the most important person to lead. Um,
Wow.
I think just take care of your body because that plays a factor. If you drink a glass of water first thing in the morning, you're going to be more alert than a cup of coffee, even because your body's dehydrated when you sleep. If you do a quick little workout in the morning, whether that's a walk around the block or I have a Peloton and do a ride on there, then that gets my blood going for the day. Lead yourself well, eat well, take time to yourself to do things you enjoy so you don't get burned out. Make sure that there's a time to focus and learn in your day. Work really, really hard when you're at work so you can come home and rest really, really hard when you get home. Um, don't get burnt out. Your work is not your life. And so all of these things, I just think all is about leading yourself well. Lead yourself to be the healthiest person you can be, because people are going to see that and they're going to emulate that. And so I think the better you lead yourself, the better you will lead everybody else. So create a plan for your life to be the healthiest leader. Healthiest leader does not mean stay up all night to get more done. It means to get a good night's rest so the next day you are ready to crush your day. So eat well, sleep well. If you are married, take care of your family well. Your job is not more important than your family. Um, and so I say lead yourself well so that you can lead everybody else better.
Wow, that's just amazing what you just hit upon it. And I think it was Craig Rochelle who actually said that the hardest person to lead is yourself. And,
Yeah, and nobody is better at leading themselves than Craig Rochelle. This guy is a machine, but um, he is the most disciplined person on this planet. But it's all about he sees the value of leading himself well. And most people will think, oh man, if I do that, then I'm gonna get less things done. No, you are the most valuable person to lead well, because when you treat yourself right, like God created you, God died for you too. Jesus says, love God, love people, you gotta love yourself to love others, right? And so not love yourself in a selfish way, but love yourself in a way of like, man, God created me. And so I'm gonna love his creation well, and that's myself too. So say what you're grateful for. Just yeah, lead yourself well. I promise you, you will lead other people better.
I think what you just said, we need to, I mean, about love yourself, not in a selfish way, definitely, but in a selfless way. It should not be about us. It should be about him. It should be more selfless. It should not be, I mean, when things get centered around us, that's when things become different. That's when things get a negative turn, and it should never center around us. It should center always and around Jesus. And I think one of the greatest, there's like one of the old hymns that we used to sing at the church is like, Jesus be the center of it all from beginning to the end. Let him be the center of it all. So it has to be Jesus, and when Jesus is the center, I think things change. And that's when, like, when you replace that selfishness with selflessness. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus was selfless. He became selfless from the highest position. He came down to earth to become the most to die the most gruesome death mankind has ever known. And that was selfless. That wasn't like an act of selflessness. And I think we need to be more like Jesus. We need to look more to him. I think, like, he's like the best leadership example, not just in leadership, in ministry, or in humility, or in teaching and everything. I think, he's like the perfect example that can be shown for everywhere. And when you look up to him and you put him at the center, it changes. It completely, your life changes. Like, it's gonna take a roller coaster ride, but it's gonna be one of the biggest changes that you can ever make in your life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, man, that's so much. Thank you so much, Matthew Swifty Perry, for being with us. And I think all those insights that you just poured into the listeners, and all what he just said about planning, about leadership, about humility. I think that's going to impact a lot of people who are listening to the show right now. Once again, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for being here with us.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
All right, the honor was ours. And to our listeners, that was Matthew Swifty Perry, all the way from Washington, talking about his leadership examples, talking about leadership, planning, and humility. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And do make sure that you guys subscribe to also LeaderSwift podcast, and make sure you guys check him out. It's going to be amazing. He's got some pretty solid content with some pretty solid people coming along. So make sure you guys don't forget to listen to him as well. And thank you so much again for listening. Stay tuned as we get back to you with a new episode with a new person. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. God bless.